Hey everyone, it's Wasabi and welcome back to another video. For the past couple of years, my main monitors have been basically Zowie esports TN panels. So I had the XL2546X 240Hz 2 years ago, then the XL2566X plus 400Hz Zowie esports monitor last year. So this video isn't a lab review, there are no charts and no measurements, it's just my lived experience switching from a pure esports monitor to this OLED display. Actually, it's a WOLED display. As you know how TN versus OLED conversations are online, it's always pretty rough. But after living with both, all I can say is that they are clearly made differently for different gamers. And to keep the video simple, because the names of these monitors are just like, oh my god. I'm gonna call my OLED the ROG Swift and my Zowie monitor Zowie monitor. Now just to be clear, I didn't switch because I suddenly stopped caring about competitive performance. If anything, I reviewed and used Zowie monitors because I do care about that direct, no nonsense esports feel that is a super instant, super smooth, high refresh rate experience. What made the ROG Swift interesting to me is that on paper it's somewhat new tech. This has a WOLED panel, but most importantly is that it didn't ask me to sacrifice the speed and motion clarity that I'm used to having. So this was an upgrade that doesn't replace the core experience that I want, because I know myself that I play way more competitive shooters than single player games. So to put things into context, for competitive FPS, Zowie has been my default monitor. Obviously not because it's pretty, but because it's purpose built and easy for my computer back then to drive. Also, the motion clarity and responsiveness are fantastic. So transitioning to an OLED display, you know, the question for me wasn't does OLED look better? Because that is already 100% yes. The real question was, does it feel like an esports monitor when you're actually playing? And for me, this is something very important. So looking through my own eyes and not a high-speed camera, I genuinely couldn't tell a meaningful difference in motion clarity when I switched from my Zowie to this ROG Swift. And that is a very big deal. Honest to God, if this WOLED felt worse in motion clarity compared to my Zowie, I would have immediately requested to return and ask for my money back. And then this video wouldn't exist and I would have packed it up, gone back to my Zowie, and that would have been the end of it. So thankfully, the smoothness, the clarity and responsiveness of this WOLED is fantastic. I would even go as far as to say that this is the esports monitor that Zowie fans have been waiting for, minus the TN panel compromises. So the ROG WOLED panel doesn't just look nicer than Zowie's TN panel, it gives you more visual information. So deeper blacks, more contrast, richer colors, and more perceived depth. Now, I'm not someone who picks a monitor for colors first. For me, I've been perfectly fine daily driving an esports TN panel, but I'm also not going to pretend that visuals don't matter at all. And that's because OLED monitors makes even competitive games feel more alive. Take Overwatch 2 for example, the effects pop more. In Valorant, the skins actually look like you get a bit more value for the money. And in the finals, with all the destruction and people exploding into coins, it just looks awesome. But that's it, more information isn't always a straight upgrade, especially in competitive FPS. Zowie monitors do have an advantage with how the image looks. The image is flatter, there's less contrast and less color detail. And because of that, honest to God, between the two monitors, targets feel easier to identify quickly on my Zowie monitor. There's less visual noise competing for your attention. A way you can see it is OLED monitors feed you more data and Zowie monitors give you less. And sometimes less is exactly what gives you an edge in competitive FPS. Oh, and the 1080p resolution of a Zowie monitor, it is so much easier to drive and get higher frame rates if you're on an older PC. Now let's talk about the pricing. At MSRP, this monitor is very expensive. It's very expensive no matter which region you're in. And at full price, I honestly don't think that it's fair value at all, especially in the market where monitor tech moves incredibly fast. And you know, this WOLED tech is pretty new, so it's only right to expect improvements in short time. But here's the funny part, I actually managed to buy this cheaper than a Zowie XL2586X plus 600Hz monitor, which is Zowie's latest highest tier esports model. But even so, still very expensive, and I'm very realistic, and whether I bought this or it was given to me doesn't fucking matter. This monitor is very tough to recommend for the full price. I do love the design though, and the back panel reminds me of Magneto's prison cell for whatever reason. For me, the ROG Swift sits in a really interesting middle ground. I didn't feel like I gave up motion clarity or responsiveness compared to my Zowie XL2566X Plus, and I did gain a lot in versatility. Gaming still feels fast and connected. Creative work and day-to-day use just feels very lifted with the visual experience. Going from 400 to 540Hz was not significant for me because 400Hz is already super high, and honestly I wouldn't even bother with the 720Hz mode. It's just as smooth as using the 540Hz, but you feel a lot more miserable looking at the image. And for me, really, the key thing is that I didn't feel like I was taking a step backwards in terms of motion clarity and responsiveness, and that's that. So how do I feel about it? Overall, I enjoyed this monitor. The performance has been brilliant, but at the full price, I really can't bring myself to tell people to go out and buy one right now. And no, it's not because it's bad, but because it feels like it's close to being the ultimate gaming monitor, but because of one or two things like the dirty screen effect, and if you look at consumer reports online, there are a lot of complaints and it's just too much of a risk. And honestly, I think its competitors would easily do something just like this at a much better price. No shade on ASUS ROG, but for this one, you buy it for the brand and for the design. Honestly, I would recommend to wait and see what other brands have to offer over the year, because again, monitor tech develops rather quickly. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, found it helpful, please leave a like and subscribe to support my channel, and I guess I'll see you in the next one.